Welcome to Innate Express Podcast. I'm Haig John, chiropractor in Melbourne, Florida. Our mission is to ground you in service and inspire you to serve at your very best. I am honored to share these live group recordings with you. Let's get started. Today we've got Palmer's Law of Life, volume 34, and a couple of writings from the chiropractor D.D. Palmer's 1914 and the chiropractor's adjuster 1910. So let's just read a couple of those things. How does that sound? I've given this Palmer's Law of Life away so many times, and I didn't have one for myself when I was just trying to find it because I want to read it at DE, and so I just got this one in the mail from Sherman. So I'm just going to open up somewhere and read. How's that sound? Okay. The man is the unnatural animal who wants to do more than he was naturally built to do, wants to be more than he is, wants to do more than he should, scales mountains, explores depths of oceans, travels at 100 miles per hour on land and thousands of miles in the air, struggles, strains, twists, his accidents beyond bone, even to fracture, dislocation, subluxations, and occasional misalignments. Exciting from the circular base of the solid, bony magnum foramen of his skull is spinal cord, the accumulation of all multiple extensional brain fibers into nerve fibers between every brain cell to every tissue cell. Passing downward through spinal canal into and through each solid bony ring in each vertebra is a continuation of spinal cord from brain. At every intervertebral space, laterally and between each two vertebrae are foramen from which nerves desiccate from spinal cord, passing externally outward en route on paths to each muscle, organ, tissue cell. Passage of spinal cord between magnum foramen of skull and into spinal canal of atlas and axis and through the solid bony ring into each other, subject to being decreased in size, shape, and circumference due to constriction, due to abnormal distortion and relationships of interrelationship between one vertebra and the other, due to accidental occasions of external forces in opposition to internal resistance force, which subluxate one upon the other. This distorted intervertebral space occludes the opening. This is all bold now. Decreases its size, produces pressure upon spinal cord or spinal nerve. Pressure upon spinal cord or spinal nerves reduces carrying capacity of transmission of the abstract innate mental impulse nerve force flow from above source to at brain to below distribution in muscles, organs, and or nerve and or tissue cells. This impeded quality flow of power, force, or energy slows down action, motion in muscles, disturbing normal function and organic expression. I'm going to just finish this. Disturbed normal function depends upon location of muscular abnormal action, organs or organs to which they are distributed to where they are unable to produce normal quality motion, produced a dis-ease. What is dis-ease is how its symptoms may be correlated into diagnosis. Depends upon, these are important, this list. Distribution of nerve fiber, location of these fibers, number of nerve fibers under pressure, degrees of that pressure, length of time abnormality continues to grow in its abnormal state of being. What this disease could be depends upon combination of paralyzed muscles, organs affected at their peripheries, directly or indirectly related, as they become involved in reduced frequency of activity of motion in varied combinations or interrelated functions in organs. So, the subluxation deniers out there in the world are saying, we don't want any of that spiritual crap. That's all this mumbo jumbo, hocus pocus stuff, this subluxation. Was any of that metaphysical? I know it's not easy to read. He's writing in short bursts and making his own abbreviations. But was anything of that metaphysical? The bone out of place, affecting the nerve, the outcome being dysfunction in some way, dis-ease in some way, because the nerve is irritated, stretched, or, irritated. Less function through it. It's mechanical physiology. The subluxation deniers, unfortunately, have never been exposed to this simplicity, right? They're thinking we're talking in religious ways when we talk about subluxation. Where do you get that from? It's not in these books. We do talk about how innate or educated, separating ourselves from our educated mind and getting to our innate mind. But if we put it in a simple term, if I had to think about, I made a gorgeous egg sandwich this morning. It was so delicious with, farm eggs and, Irish cheese, and it was fantastic. I enjoyed every single bite of it. Once I left, that enjoyment left my mouth, right? My brain was thinking, wow, this is delicious. I was no longer in control in my educated mind. As I'm swallowing this, which is a motor response, I do say, okay, let's swallow this. But half the time we're swallowing, we don't even think about it. It goes down through our throat and down to our stomach. And if we're trying to think about breaking those molecules down, breaking those chemical bonds, and trying to make that stuff into a slurry that our body's going to start absorbing, it gets through the to the biliary duct, and all the bile gets into there and starts digesting the food more, breaking all that stuff down, breaking chemical bonds, like I said, and to the process that it's making this beautiful living clay that we live in. That's beyond our control. Your body's doing that. It doesn't matter your education level. A child does it the moment it nurses with its mother. Right? It's not doing it through the umbilical cord. And that's where BJ, and I think maybe it was DD as well, but I think BJ talked about that. When does innate kick in? It's when the baby is born, not in conception. It's just a little bit of, a philosophical thought to think about, because the baby's not 100% on its own innate, right? But that's something else. But when the body is on the job, you're breaking down all your food. You're breaking down your food. We can't think about it. If we had to think about that in the processes of our day, we would have nothing else. We wouldn't be able to do anything else. So if we want to just look at, that's the innate intelligence inside of us. We don't have to make it metaphysical. If that's not your gig, hey, your body's doing magical things right now. It's taking that oxygen in through your lungs, out to your alveoli, and the heme and the hemoglobin in your blood is absorbing that oxygen and using it through the tissues of your body. If you had to think about that process, you wouldn't have time for anything in the day to create it within your body. That's innate on the job. If we want to talk about it, like I said just a moment ago, if we could want to talk about it in more metaphysical terms, you can. But it doesn't need to be. I tell that story about people and you're digesting your food, because I also talk about chiropractic as connecting the material with the spiritual, the material with God's innate intelligence inside of us. And we get a little more metaphysical now, because we say chiropractic philosophy is educated, innate, and universal intelligence. Universal intelligence being God. Innate intelligence is being our individual God's expression in the body. The educated is the things we've learned from other people, right? Actually in utero. We know babies learn in utero. To be able, especially if there's stress on the outside of the environment, there is a system for that baby to come out here and be able to handle those stresses, right? So we can look at it in different ways. But, I make it simple for people. That's where your body, you're not thinking about digesting your food and making new cells. Your body is doing that. That we can call spiritual intelligence. You can call it chi. You can call it life. You can call it metabolic processes. I look at it in a sense for myself in a spiritual way. because we can't make cells in the laboratory, living cells. We can try and reproduce them in different ways. They conceive children in test tubes, but in reality, the more you fiddle around with something, the more probability it's not going to survive, and they know that. So the subluxation, how important it is. We can look at it in grander ways. I don't remember if we looked at it when we talked a week or so ago about the subluxation, looking at it different from less light expression to under the expression of the light. Then we're really getting, for me, then even a higher understanding that the listings that we get are codes given from the spiritual realm, from God, to be able to serve the people so they can live better lives. That's the way I look at it. Okay? So those are all big levels, and they're all big jumps, and each one could be big for an individual. But you meet people where they are, right? What did everybody else get out of that? There's a lot of meat there, right? And I just...
What I've kind of... Like, I see that, and I see the analytical point of it, and saying that we're talking about science and we're not really referencing anything spiritual or outside of that. But, I just wonder why it's such a big deal when chiropractors talk about a spiritual component, but if a medical doctor is religious in any aspect, you don't see the medical profession bashing that medical doctor for being spiritual or believing that in anything other than that. Because it doesn't change the care that I'm going to give somebody. My beliefs behind what I do don't change the care. Doesn't make it any less. In my opinion, it actually makes it greater. But if you're just going to look at what we're doing, it doesn't make it any less. So why would you bash somebody for being spiritual?
What would you say? What would anybody think? Why would that be happening?
I think it's because what we heard previously about the cultural authority that profession has, because of how culture has been brought up to respect that medical profession as an authority, and chiropractors still not having that standing,
I think there's a lot of challenges to people's personal beliefs. So you having a religious or a spiritual or religious look behind your profession, it's like people they want to push things away that's not their beliefs, because everybody's kind of questioning each other, and they just don't want you to introduce something that goes against their beliefs. They're just trying to hold on to what they've been told their life and kind of have it make sense for them and confirm for themselves that what they believe is true. So if somebody else says something that's not, it threatens their security and their self-security, kind of understanding their life. So I think that's what it is.
I heard a pretty cool talk as a neuro researcher. The guy is telling a story more or less on this, how if you're born in, for example, Middle East, you'll have the Quran as your spiritual book. If you're born in Africa, there's a different story on how the world was created. If you're born here in this side of the world, then you have the two Homo sapiens with the reptile and the forbidden fruit. And if you're in Africa, that story is going to sound completely ridiculous. And if you're born here, probably the African belief of a monster having digestive issues and spitting out the world, and then the medicine and the humans, but that's their belief. And it all boils down to where you're raised, where you grew up, and what your fathers or your figures of power, make you believe. At the end, it's just core values. I think just respecting everybody, not causing harm to your neighbor, being better than you were yesterday, all these things. I mean,
good.
Yeah. To me, what's funny is that I don't think it's the outside that has any judgment on what we believe. The outside doesn't even understand what we believe. That Absolutely. It's just strictly coming from inside of our own profession that attacks.
Oh, okay.
So,
it's absolutely true. You're right on target. It's within our own ranks, and no one else knows. Outside people don't hear that or see it. We've had one person come in. Someone posted the other day about getting adjusted, and someone said, "You got to go see Dr. Haig." And someone right after that said, you know, if they start talking about subluxation, you walk out the door. And I said, where is that? Can I reply to that guy? So how would that come up? It wasn't from general public. That had to be from a chiropractor himself, right? When they want to be accepted to the medical profession, if it seems metaphysical to them, you know, then it's out. Because that group really wants to be accepted, for insurance reasons, all those type of things, because they want to start writing drug prescriptions. And, you know, I mean, could you imagine what would happen to your, I think I just paid $1,500 for, you know, $1 million, $3 million. I don't quote me on that. I can't even remember what it was, but, you know, as a medical doctor would be $15,000, maybe $25,000, $30,000, depending what you're doing. You know, drugs kill people. You have to have high rates of insurance. You know, I'm not picking, you know, I don't want to even advertise these groups, but like, you know, the ACA and NCMEC are, you know, sleep together, and they are, you know, insurance carriers, so they'd rather you have higher insurance premiums, just in a basic understanding like that. Think about that. But, you know, the more liability you have, and if you're going to give someone that could potentially hurt them, why would you ever do it? You know, chiropractic does not hurt people. You hear about all these stories stroking people out. It's not from chiropractic. Those are recent stories. It doesn't happen. What they do now.
What we heard is it makes the news because it's rare.
Exactly.
It's not constantly happening. You don't have in the news like, oh, 1,000 people died in a hospital, like, because it's normal.
Right. Yeah. That's
so
right.
It makes the news because it's like rare that it happens.
So you think about just in a hospital, if you gave a doctor this. Just that message we read, if you could understand it, it's like in hieroglyphics sort of, but, you know, a bone pressure on a nerve and affects how everything works. And Speransky, we haven't talked about that much yet, but I had a book just republished. It's called Speransky. Speransky is the writer, and it's the theory and basis of medicine. I don't remember the whole title, but I just got a couple of hundred of them made because it was done during, you know, the Cold War and behind the Iron Curtain of the Soviet Union. And one of the researchers that was on Pavlov's team, Pavlov's dog, he did research on nerve conduction and in sickness. And he would introduce virus and bacteria to the nerves and not the blood, and the animal would, you know, get that, you know, infection or whatever it might be. And showed that disease and nerve tracing, when we trace it back the organs, has everything to do with the nerve. And the whole body, everything has to do with the nerve system. And he did all the research. That is the most evidence-based bit of information you can have, because there was no drugs to be sold. He wasn't doing, you know, research in a university that needed grant money from the pharmaceutical companies. All this stuff that they constantly get busted on for making up false claims. Their whole, you know, purpose for being was to have healthy Russians and do research to have a healthier Soviet Union, right? Think about that. I know that might sound a little strange, but, you know, but that's what it's really about. Our research, double-blind studies of this, that, and the other, they bust the researchers continually. And all the research done in the JAMA and the New England Journal of Medicine, the people are paid to have these outcomes. Not the actual research. None of it's really true research. It's terrible. So Speransky's book is absolutely amazing, and we'll probably talk about it when we come to Palmer a little bit, and I'll have a few copies extra just in case. And but, you know, when we talk about nerve stress, B.J. Palmer, this is 1958. This is close to the end of his life, and, you know, the books got shorter because it got more simple. And as we go through this and we understand, if there's stress on the nerve system, we don't function well. That's basic grounding, earthy stuff. You get a pinched nerve in your arm, right? Realize those nerves also probably go to the thyroid. It's part of the circulatory ganglia that go to your heart and your lungs. Other things are going to be affected. It just makes absolute sense. The reason there's no research out there in the world for this right now, besides Speransky in the 1940s that did that, is because there's no money in it. And if they do research out there in the world, I tell you, it doesn't make any sense to me when you hear research unless the people are adjusted for their subluxations first, and then you can do research on them, double-blind studies. But research doesn't matter on the subluxated because you don't know what the outcome is because their nerve system's compromised, to me, right? Having a full-functioning nerve system, and then you do research on things, right? So, does anybody want to read another part of this?
Just open up randomly.
Just to open up randomly.
A modern intellectual is specifically human, has an interest in rational mind and an ability to use it. As such, he is the most important.
Good morning.
The human race can produce. Most people are parasites living luxuriously on the work produced by a handful of superior non-conformist minds. This is in part true of our profession. This subject is applicable to our profession. Unseen is advertised. What is said is believed. People buy, take, thinking that is the accepted thing to do. To conform to the dictates of society, whether good or bad, helpful or injurious. Sick people don't know. The physician says, therefore, follow his instructions. Sick people are conformist. They don't think or know different except through bitter and costly experience.
What you guys get out of that? That's again from Palmer's Law of Life.
So it really just talking about people being sheep. It's just typical. I mean, everybody's been a sheep at some point. We're all sheep in some way.
And there's times to be that way,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I understand, absolutely. One term I've heard a lot of people use in the medical profession is sheeple, and I can't stand that term. It's horrible. I've had a lot of medical doctors come in here, and then, you know, they feel like they're in their inner circle, and they talk about sheeple. And I said, that is just the worst term I've ever heard in my life. I hate it. But sometimes
It's descriptive. I mean, I
It
think
is
it makes
descriptive.
sense. It's not that it's a
I
good
know.
word. It brings a bad image, but
it
it's
does.
true. I
It's
feel
descriptive.
Like.
It is.
What is that? What does it mean?
Just
People being sheeple.
just following blindly,
Yeah.
and you know that's what the billions of dollars of medical advertising is spent for, is just people follow blindly and do whatever a doctor says. And I've had people tell me, I'll do whatever a doctor tells me to do. All right, show up here 3 times a week and start whittling yourself off those drugs. Really, you should say, start talking to your doctor about taking less of those drugs. Giving advice on drugs is not what we do. But really is that the 1%. You think about how many chiropractic students are getting up like you guys are, training and reading philosophy before starting your day. In the entire world, how many do you think are doing that? I think it's just only this group.
100?
Okay. No, not a.
Hopefully.
You know what? That's what the movement.
Hopefully.
That's the movement I'd like to start seeing. Right. That's what I want to see that create. And if we could do our things, I was talking to Junior about in the morning, making a video in Spanish for Mexico.
Yeah.
It would be really cool. But you're the 1% of the 1%. That is powerful. What is that going to do for the rest of your life in chiropractic? And when you get out of the school thing and then go and serve. The most of any profession is sitting back and letting the rest of it do the job. So being proactive in what we do, getting up, being a voice for our profession and for yourself and standing up for what you believe in is very important, whether you're part of a group or not. If you're with the FCS or the ICA or whatever group it might be, if you're not, do it on your own. I show up by myself to the CCE meetings. I show up by myself. You just go and you fight the battle. You know what? Someone going to take a swing at you? I wish they would. That would be awesome. And then there'd be an excuse for a battle royal. But, showing up, doing the work, getting into the philosophy, just breaking this down in 5 minutes of getting an understanding, those were 2 completely different concepts from one book a few pages apart, right? Reading from cover to cover as a novel is not easy. We'll do more Green Book readings. Okay, this one I'm going to read at DE, and we're going to pick out some and just read it. Our philosophy we're going to do at noon. Okay, on Friday, because we won't have time in the morning. But this is a great one. You can open up any page and you'll have something. Let's finish with D.D. Palmer. What do you think? We read that one yesterday, Founded Upon Tone. Let's do this one next. God bless you.
Thank you.
Is adjusting therapeutical or a remedy? Is it an auxiliary to any method or need one? Spinal adjusting is not therapeutical. It's not a remedy for the disturbed performance of vital functions. It does not remedy, it adjusts causes so that innate may correct abnormal function and change morbid into normal structures. Spinal adjusting is not an auxiliary to any method. To relieve an impingement in acute diseases by one adjustment in less than a minute, so innate can transmit functions in a normal amount, is not an auxiliary to any method. Neither does chiropractic need any method as an auxiliary. Those who expect to put in a lifetime combating disease, fighting the entrance of disease as though it was an enemy with hostile intent, should not learn chiropractic. It is very difficult to change a medical fighter into a peaceful chiropractor. This is the chiropractor's adjuster.
What page is it?
117.
So it goes right along with what we're saying today, right? The medical fighter into a peaceful chiropractor. That's my newsletter, actually, we're giving out to the people today and yesterday, or last week. I mean, is that all about the spiritual nature of subluxation? It's vitalistic thought, yeah. But it's not what all these people are saying about subluxation. Okay, so that's D.D. Palmer, B.J. Palmer. We can get into deeper thoughts of philosophy, but it makes perfect sense, right? The one thing about the medical fighter to the peaceful chiropractor, a lot of people are fighting for medicine to come into chiropractic, and chiropractors have been very peaceful. Even the ones that are out, speaking around the world, it's really about being peaceful. And we've said, you're allowed to, you do whatever you want, it's cool, we're not going to mess with, there's the term mixers and straight. People get upset about those terms, whatever, but that's what D.D. Palmer and B.J. said, so those are the ones that I use, okay? So it's not a slight on anybody. But, we just said, okay, you just do what you're doing, we're doing what we're doing, but what happened is that group has become very powerful, and they want to destroy what the peaceful chiropractors are doing. And they're fighting to have medicine in chiropractic, and they're fighting fervently. And, I don't know for sure, I have really no idea. Besides advertising dollars in the magazines, which ranks up to millions of dollars probably, and then potentially drug money behind them, pharmaceutical, who knows where it's coming from. But these people right now are very powerful, trying to destroy what we have. So we can't even do what we do anymore. The peaceful chiropractors have to, pull up their big boy panties and big girl pants and fight for what we believe in. We do have to be, at the forefront and communicating to people and fight for what we believe in a little bit more. I don't want people to not do what they're doing in chiropractic. Let them live their lives, but don't tell me what I have to do either. So that's what I think this statement really means, because the medical profession isn't really attacking us anymore. Maybe they are, but it's mostly from within. I think that's the tactic, I do believe, that has switched. So
they create, conflict within the profession, and
huge.
We're doing the work for them, basically. So
exactly.
I think that's the issue, becoming more homogenous between us.
Yeah. Bruce Lipton, he was very popular in chiropractic for a long time. You guys ever heard of him? Mm-hmm. He's a cellular biologist. He said, before I read Dee book, I was an atheist. After I read D.D. Palmer's book, I believed and knew that there was a God. Okay? That's pretty powerful.
It's pretty powerful. He's not a chiropractor anymore.
Right. But you know why you don't see him in chiropractic anymore? Because you guys are all messed up. You're fighting amongst each other. I can't be a part of it. Yeah. I sent him an email the other day. Jim Chester said, hey, let's get Bruce Lipton on there. I've sent him messages before. We had some banter back and forth. He used to speak at New Beginnings. I've seen him speak there. I have a great video from it, but I haven't heard back yet. But he's even said that you guys are everyone's just fighting with each other. So that's a sad thing. Something that could change the lives of millions by one person reading a book. And he's affected a lot of people now.
Yeah.
And then, what do we have? Still the same old bickering, right? Get up and serve, fight for what we believe in. But you know what? Patty Giuliano said, we were talking about this in Italy, and she said, Peter Kevorkian's her husband, she said, Peter said this to me, I get up today, I'm going to adjust the people, I'm going to go to bed, wake up in the morning, adjust the people, going out and serving every day is going to be the same for me. How much ever these groups are annoying me and whatever else is going into politics and what have you, it's really still about your people. Getting up and going and serve your people is the most important thing. Does anybody else have any comments or anything?
Educating, because I think it's a lack of education.
Very
you
important.
Read it, and if you understand it, then you go like, oh, wait, this was founded on this. So
Yeah. We wouldn't have it without it.
yeah.
Anything else? Okay, let's start our other reading. Thank you for listening to this episode of Innate Express Podcast. Please follow us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and share with your friends. Together we can change the world.